I grew up with this belief that everything about me was wrong. My sexuality was wrong. The color of my skin was wrong. How I was wrong. My own father couldn't love me. My own mother couldn't love me. And I constantly felt as if I was out of place within this world. When I would post as Calvin, the male Calvin, nobody was ever interested in what I had to say. But then put me in a wig with some underwear on, my videos are getting like 2 million hits, you know? So, that's the one. I spent 2 hours with this counselor who then was able to diagnose me as being transgender. That being said, I went into those sessions knowing exactly what to say because I had studied and I had researched and I had listened and read all of these, online blogs about what to say when you see your doctor, how to get what you need, how to get the hormones, how to get that appointment at the gender identity clinic.
I'd done a 12-step program, and what I found out through that 12-step program was my masks that I wore throughout my whole life, and being trans was the biggest mask. I was going to become a different person, and I was going to become a woman to eradicate everything about Calvin because I just couldn't sit with Calvin.
It was a sense of conversion therapy for me because I was no longer identified as being gay. I was now straight. Oh, hallelujah. I'm cured. I'm now a straight woman. Like, that was my belief.
Hey there, Cylinder Radio listeners. A few years ago, the documentary The Social Dilemma laid out how social media is very dangerous and bad for American society. But if you want to use social media to make yourself better, you can check out my free download, The Social Solution, on cylinderradio.com/social solution. Hello and welcome to the next episode of Cylinder Radio. Viewpoint diversity is the name of the game for this podcast. And I think that people's stories are really important for trying to figure our way through how to build the best society and things along those lines. So my guest today has a story that I'm really interested in hearing and sharing with my audience. And it is Calvin Lunt. He is a wellness coach. He's a spiritual guide, and he also is a detransitioner. So if you are a follower of the podcast, you know that I've had on Chloe Cole, a young woman who transitioned to become a boy when she was very young and then detransitioned before she was even 18. And then I also recently had on Chris Beck, who transitioned after his time in the Navy SEALs and then detransitioned just recently. And Calvin has a unique story as well. But the reason I want to bring this up, Calvin, thank you so much for being here. The reason I want to bring this up is because one of the critiques that I get is, for every one detransitioner out there, I'll show you 10 people that are happy with their transition. And my response is like, so you're telling me that because they're a minority that you shouldn't elevate their voice? That's where I go, okay, now that's a problem, because if we're about elevating minority voices, trans people in general are a minority. And because you're a minority among minorities, now you're insignificant. Doesn't that go against everything of like Western culture, Enlightenment principles, and things along those lines? So I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day. Time is a very valuable resource, Calvin, and you're giving me some of yours to share your story. And I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. I'm interested in getting to know you and how you developed the way that you did on this topic. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Will. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
So can you bring us in a little bit of just like your background, how this whole thing happened? Because people might be unfamiliar with your story in general. I found you on social media, how I find a lot of people to bring on the show. Just interesting stories from all around. What's like your background? Where did you grow up? And kind of how did you grow up? What were you like as a kid? And then how did you kind of decide to become trans and then decide to flip the other way, I suppose?
Perfect. So you may hear by the accent, I'm from the UK. I'm from Liverpool. So to give your listeners a bit of a background of what, Liverpool is like and like the kind of community that I come from a really kind of working class background. It's a background of people that they work through the week and, they live for the weekend. I was brought up in a very kind of drinking culture where that kind of, the lifestyle of that was very normal. Now, I was always a very flamboyant child. I was a child that always expressed himself in any which way that I wanted. And I always touched on this, which was beautiful, because my mom always allowed me to express however I wanted to express. My mom used to have this Madonna cone bra. I don't know if anyone ever remembers that Madonna era, the cone bra. And she had one. And, that was my favorite toy. We'd parade up and down the street and I'd show off wearing this, bra, and there was nothing of it. It was just me being a child.
When was that? How old, Calvin?
So, around this age, I'm like, 4 or 5,
What year is this?
Oh, gosh, 1994.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was playful and it was, it was allowed and it was innocent. But, I think if a child's done that in today's world, it'll be labeled automatically, and I think back then we didn't have those types of labels. But, as I kind of move into my years, my stepdad moved in when I was at the age of 6. Now, I'd never had a dad in my life. My dad was really in and out, he wasn't stable. Within our relationship, he had other children. He had then moved with another woman and then began to create another family. So, there was this sense of abandonment that was there anyway. And also, not really knowing what it was like to have a male role model within the household and not really showing me what it was to be loved by another man. Now, my stepdad moved in and we didn't get on. We really didn't get on. And I think what he done during the time me being around him was I noticed that my femininity was wrong. I began to have a masculine man come into the house that, probably had his own issues around femininity, men being feminine, boys being feminine. And, I touch on this sense of coming from a working class background because men, don't have time to be feminine. Men be men, and men don't cry, and boys don't cry. And if you do cry, then it get your shit together, basically, and man up. And, I noticed that I began to hide a lot of my femininity away, began to hide as much of it as I could as possible. But I think there was obviously certain characteristics of me that couldn't ever be hidden. Yeah, I always knew that I was somewhat different, and I knew from a young age that I was definitely attracted to guys. I knew that from probably the age of 10. I was pretty young when I kind of noticed that because the kids would talk about the girls, and the girls are the girls, they were my friends, so I never seen or felt an attraction towards them. And
it wasn't even sexual, probably, right? Like, I remember like the first crushes I had, it was like, I like her, but I don't know what, like, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had nothing to do with genitals. It had nothing to do with sex. It was just like, I like something, I'm attracted to that. So it was probably something along those lines. It wasn't even sexual. It was just like drawn to.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was sexual or anything like that. But I think what I did notice was because there was a yearning to be loved by another man. And I think what, a lot of gay men that go through their lives growing up, they find themselves attracted to older men, or they find this kind of father figure and this father role within their lives because they never fully felt like they had that love from maybe their caregivers or their dad, having that male role model. So for me, I noticed that there was this sense of I was attracted to men and not boys. So, there was something there that was a little bit warped already, from a young age. Just going to kind of move through, which is I went to secondary school, which was an all-boys Catholic high school, and I couldn't hide my femininity when I got there. It was just seen, and I think, I stood out as who I was. I stood out as this kind of camp, feminine, gay kid that was brown. I grew up in a predominantly white area, so there was just so many differences that aligned. I grew up with this belief that everything about me was wrong. My sexuality was wrong. The color of my skin was wrong. How I was wrong. My own father couldn't love me. My own mother couldn't love me. And I constantly felt as if I was out of place within this world. And knowing that secret of being gay, I went through high school saying to myself, I would rather die than anyone find this out about me. And it was difficult. It was. And I think when I finally did kind of begin to tell friends about my sexuality, some friends reacted to it as fine, and then some friends would react to it negatively when we would get into a fight, and would kind of throw it in my face. It was like you're constantly in this battle of like, okay, I need to be able to love this part of myself. I need to be able to accept this part of myself, but I don't know how to do it. For me, I was a dancer. I started dancing at the age of 15. I began dancing professionally at the age of like 16, 17. And that for me was like my first escapism. I had already started drinking alcohol as well. I think it's important to touch on. I started drinking alcohol. Well, my first drink was probably when I was around the age of 10. So that already was part of escapism, It then became the escapism on the Friday after school and drinking on the weekend. And that's when life became, fabulous and, life kind of lifted a little bit. But for me, dance was definitely my first drug. It was the ultimate escape.
Yeah.
And I think with any drug, you want to find the next high. You kind of want to figure out what that next high is. And I was dancing in the gay club at the age of 18, and I was around drag queens, and I'd always, I wouldn't say I had an obsession with drag, but I dabbled in dress up in my own time. Nobody was in the house when I was a teenager, and, I played about, and I enjoyed dress up. Like, if that was Halloween, if that was an occasion, like, I loved to dress up. So I found myself at the age of 18 now working as a professional drag queen. I was working in the clubs, and I think for any of your listeners that are listening to this that may be young, now let me tell you, drag was very different back in 2008. Like, it wasn't all this yes queen and death drops and everyone's great and super fashionable, and if you're doing drag then you must be cool. Like, back then it was still a dangerous art form. It was still something that you don't brag about, because it was not seen as being sexy. It was not seen as being attractive. If you're in the gay scene and you're a drag queen, then you're just entertainment. That is it. And I think for me, it was the opportunity for me was to try and be as gay as possible, but to do it through this mask, because I didn't know how to do it as Calvin.
Yeah.
When I began doing drag, I noticed that, I was seen. I noticed that people saw me as being this fabulous person, and people wanted to know me. People wanted to hang out with me. People wanted to be my friends. I lived for the weekend. I lived for the dress up. I lived for that escapism. I lived for the drugs. I just wanted to keep chasing that high. And that was my life from like the age of 18 up until the age of 24. I was very hardcore drug taking. I'd go out on the Thursday night, I would party till the Tuesday, I'd sleep on the Wednesday, and I'd do it all over again. Like, that was my life, in and out. Fast forward into the age of 24, my dance career as a professional dancer had fizzled away. My life was now ingrained in the club scene, on the drag scene, partying, taking drugs. I then landed a spot on a MTV reality show. And this is it. This was my big break. This was, my way of becoming anyone I wanted to become, because now I get the full validation of the world and not just my little circle in Liverpool. I get the full validation. And I always remember saying to myself, if I get on a TV show or if I become famous, I'm going to walk down Oxford Street in London in full drag in the daytime. That for me was like a big thing to do. Just going to do it so I'm just seen. I'm noticing this pattern as I look back, and I look back at my life, which is, it's just this constant state of validation, this constant place of trying to fit in and trying to find who I am. But I'm doing all of this by placing the mask on top of myself. Now, the TV show that I done, it flopped. It didn't get the break that we thought it was going to get. We got one season, and I had gained all these followers on social media. I was doing videos, I was posting, and, people were interested. But what was really interesting was when I would post as Calvin, the male Calvin, nobody was ever interested in what I had to say. Yeah. Nobody was ever interested. Mm-hmm. And I'm talking about some serious topics as well. I'm talking about like mental health, or, how I'm feeling, or what's going on in the world. Talking about some like maybe like spirituality, sharing some of my meditation practices. And I'd get like 2 likes, but then put me in a wig with some underwear on, my videos are getting like 2 million hits, So, that's the one. So I didn't realize that I was finding dopamine and finding these hits within dress up. This is maybe who I'm supposed to be.
That makes sense. It does. It makes sense. I'm thinking from like a child's point of view. Like, I'm not special. When I'm myself, then I'm this, blah, 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 that no one cares. But as soon as I present this way, I get all kinds of accolades and applause. And people say, you know, you're so brave for just being your authentic self and you're a hero. And it's like, well, of course I'm going to lean into that. Like, that's a very human thing. Yeah.
Yeah. But they see this side of life, you know? But only I'm getting to see the other side, which is the other back of my hand. You know, I'm only getting to see that other side, which is the pain, which is the grief, which is the you know, the guilt, the shame. Like, there's so many emotional torments that are happening on the other end. Now, my transition, it happened very gradual. It wasn't a kind of like a switch overnight. Unfortunately, we live in a world where when you participate on reality TV shows, you're offered the world, you're given so many freebies. You know, would you like a little bit of Botox? Would you like a little bit of filler? Would you like your hair done? Would you like your nails done? This would look great on you. How about this? How about that? You know, I'm from working class Liverpool. We didn't get those things growing up. You know, we didn't. So we take it. You get offered something, you take it. My aesthetic became very androgynous. My aesthetic, you know, I began to grow out my hair and I began to get extensions sewed into my hair. Then the Botox came, and then the semi-permanent eyelashes came, then the nails came, and then the more feminine clothes happened, and then the contouring came, and then the everyday makeup kind of happened. And at this place, non-binary wasn't a thing back then. It wasn't really, and I think if it was, I probably would have, you know, said it out, you know, I'm non-binary. But I was very much I'm a man. I wear makeup. You know, I wear dresses. This is who I am, and I stuck with that for about a year. Then I began to find people online which were sharing their journeys of transition. So this point, you know, I'm living this life where I'm hitting, you know, 2-3 million hits on a video. I'm getting all this free stuff. I'm looking great. My hair's done. My makeup's done. I've got Botox. And I don't have a job. I'm living in my childhood bedroom back at my mum's house, creating videos with no money, but living this high life lifestyle where...
Again, the dopamine hits, though.
Yeah.
Still getting out. And it's so interesting how you compare it to a drug, because it's like that same amount's not going to carry you over in a little bit. So you just got to keep progressing. Like we said, like keep moving, keep getting more and more and more. That makes a lot of sense. So then you were exposed to the kind of trans world, and that's a different level, right? Like doing hair and nails and makeup. I mean, that's David Bowie stuff. That's all cool. But then it's when we get into what was it then as far as trans? Was it like just like, I guess it wouldn't be puberty blockers at that age. So it'd be like hormones and surgeries and things along those lines?
So it was more like the identification of the emotional and psychological comparisons with trans women that I was listening to. You know, it was this sense of, you know, I was listening to trans women online talking about they never felt like they were attracted to gay men. They always felt like they were attracted to straight men. They always felt very different growing up. They never felt like they fully fitted in. And, you know, they understood what it was to be gay, but they never felt like they were ever gay.
That's interesting to me as like I'm like we're like a straight arrow and all these different things, like white male, cis het, whatever they call me. Like it's interesting, like that idea of being attracted to men but not gay men. That's an interesting concept. How does that, like, I feel so ignorant, but like what is that? Is it like a forbidden fruit thing? Is it just like you like masculine men? But because there are masculine gay men, like what is that? Do you think?
My boyfriend is definitely one of those.
Yeah, I know a bunch of them. Burly, tough dudes. Like, what do you think it is that men would be attracted to straight men as opposed to being attracted to gay men? I'm very curious.
Internalized homophobia. There is an ingrained deep sense of shame that how can I can't even accept myself for my queerness. I can't accept myself for my own gayness. Then how am I going to label someone that is just as feminine because it's going to remind me of me? And I don't want that. So therefore, if I find someone that is super straight, super masculine, you know, there's a thing within the gay community which is called straight actor. I'm not actually going to say it because I don't know if this is a PG thing, but if you're doing things,
say whatever you want.
If you're putting a dick in your mouth, that is not straight acting. I'm sorry, but you know, that's what I would kind of vibrate towards. It was always, you know, I'd want to get with the guy that was straight. And, you know, when I was doing drag, a lot of the men that came onto me doing drag were always straight guys, you know, in the nightclub, and, you know, my girlfriend's at the back, like, you know, let's kind of head to the toilet while no one sees. And
they're attracted to femininity, and you're overly feminine. It's like an abundance of feminine. It's like a Barbie doll feminine. So if you're attracted to femininity, I think I heard Blair White's boyfriend or husband talk about this. Like, he's considering himself a straight guy, and he's like, I like a lot of femininity. I like those nails, the big hair, and the big boobs, and all that kind of stuff. It would make sense. That would make a connection. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, and it's this sense of like it's fantasy. It's that kind of it's a world of fantasy, you know.
Yeah.
So I was very kind of used to that world, and you know, that's kind of how my world was growing up in the gay community. And you know, I kind of, you know, so I found myself, you know, spending most of my time just searching and researching and looking at trans women and looking at their stories and watching their videos, and then my story became, you know, then my story became a story which was then sharing my feelings, my thoughts on social media. I was probably one of the first trans people in the UK to share stories so publicly. I remember I made an appointment to see the doctor because it was, I'd already made the decision in my mind what I want.
What was this like for like bottom surgery? Or just not yet, just hormones first. Because it progresses, right? Like same thing that like your whole story so far has been progressing. So it starts probably with hormones, and then it's maybe breast implants or something like that. And then it's like, you know, chopping.
Yeah, I think for me, it was always about the breast. It was always about that sense of, because for me to be presenting to the world, you know, whatever was downstairs, nobody would ever know about that. You know, that would be hidden away as I walked the street. For me to have breath it felt super important for me, so that the world could see this is who I was. To the point of studying trans women, it also went down the route of normalizing myself to watch trans porn, you know, and seeing what that looked like and what my body should look like, and aspiring to be, you know, this certain way. When I went to my first doctor's appointment, it was not spoken about of, you know, I want breasts, I want this. It was more of I want to question my gender. I think I might be transgender. Now, my doctor didn't know what to do or what to say at that time, and I then self-referred myself to an LGBT clinic in Liverpool that had the help that I needed. Now, I spent 2 hours with this counselor who then was able to diagnose me as being transgender within 2 hours, which was 2 sessions. That being said, I went into those sessions knowing exactly what to say, because I had studied and I had researched and I had listened and read all of these, you know, online blogs about what to say when you see your doctor, how to get what you need, how to get the hormones, how to get that appointment at the gender identity clinic. Now, in the UK, it's a bit different, because obviously we have NHS, you know, we have National Health Service here. So it's a little bit different to America, because I know that in America still, you know, ensuring they kind of help estrogen or hormone quicker. Now, here in the UK, there is a whole process for that, which could be a 24-month wait to even get into a gender identity specialist. Now, when I was told that, you know, my waiting time to get into the gender identity clinic, just to even have that full assessment, was going to be up to 12 months. I waited like one of those months, and then decided to self-medicate. And, you know, self-medicate, which was buying estrogen off the internet and following a protocol that trans women had, you know, suggested to do online. So I did, you know, I self-medicated for just under a year. Yeah.
Did you ever consider getting like bottom surgery?
Bottom surgery for me was always a no. Like, it was always
having a penis, right?
Of course, you know, with my pride and joy, it was the money maker. You know?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big one. Like, so I wonder if that is there's so much stuff that I have questions for you on. Like, but just sticking with that one, like, that seems to be a thing. Like, if you look at your penis and you go, like, I got to get rid of this thing. This thing is the hindrance. This is the problem in my life because it prevents me from being my true self, compared to someone who's like, I like this thing. It's actually great. It makes me feel good, whatever it is. That seems to be like a difference among people as well. And even when it comes like identifying, that's why it gets kind of tricky too, because like one of the big controversial people out here in the trans world is Leah Thomas, that swimmer who I believe, I don't know for sure, but I believe still has penis and testicles and is competing in women's sports. And that's part of like why people go, well, is she really trans? And it's like that whole issue gets so complex. That's why I like having so many conversations about this, is like, is it based on how you identify, or is it based on some sort of metric like surgeries and stuff like that? And we haven't figured that out yet. That's why I like having conversations on this, Calvin, because we have to figure this out in a way that we can kind of agree, even if we agree to disagree, but agree on, because right now it's all over the place. Like I could say to some people, like if I just identify as a woman, now I'm a woman. And then other people are like, well, no, that doesn't make sense at all. But we can't seem to agree on that kind of stuff. What are your thoughts on that? Like what I'm saying about here about like where the penis plays into this whole thing?
I don't know. I think because obviously, I do have a lot of trans friends and who I expect and see as women. Now, I think when it comes to this whole identity movement that we're in, I think what that has actually done is actually took us 20 steps backwards in regard to what we had. I think this, if you push something so hard, it's going to just catapult back even harder. And okay, I see myself, right? I was a trans woman, right? And, we talk about trans women of color as well. I was a trans woman of color. I lived my life to the best of my abilities. When I was living as Cal, that was my name back then. I had a job in retail. I took the bus to work every day. I traveled Thailand. I traveled around all these islands by myself as a trans woman. And, I held my own. Now, we are living in this world where we're constantly perpetuating the story that it's not safe, it's not safe, it's not safe. The world is not safe, but the world is also safe. It's how you choose to move through the world. Now, I chose to move through the world with the decision of I'm choosing to be this person. So I can choose to be this person and stay in my house and cower and say the world's not safe, or I can go out there and live my life. And I think in anything, it's to be respectful of others and not to see myself as this victim. And, I was respected by people, whether I had a penis in my underwear or not, because I was respectful on all levels, whether that was going to a bathroom or not. I'd always have to suss the situation, if there was a disabled bathroom there, I'm just going to go into the disabled bathroom. If this doesn't look like a safe place for me to go into the bathroom, then I'm going to wait. I'm going to go to another bathroom or, so it was about kind of the situation. And yeah, it would be nice if we were all to live in this world where we could just walk through life and everything works out for us in our favor. Unfortunately, the world doesn't work like that. Because there's been such a push with women's spaces being taken up in this kind of sense of identity where, you've got you've got people with beards who are saying that they're women but want to take up women's spaces. I can see how that is becoming a problem because I can't explain what it makes me think or makes me feel. I think it's just so absurd that you're expecting to just take up space straight away. By doing that, it actually discounts a lot of trans women that have been fighting the fight for 20, 30 years and that are living their lives, very kind of kosher and just and fitting into society and, and not being the loudest.
Yeah, that's something I had Corinna Cohn on an early podcast, and that's something that, and then I've had a bunch of people on the podcast who are trans, and they're like, I just want to live my life. Like, I'm not trying to push anything on anybody, but just let me live and present the way that I want. Like Corinna Cohn was just like, I just want to be a trans woman. Like, I just want to be just a woman out in the world. Like, I'm not trying to push anything on anybody. I'm just trying to live this way. When you say the way you grew up and what drag was and everything like that, those stories are so powerful, Calvin. You just feel like you can't be your true self. Being gay is something terrible. Those stories resonate with people who are soft-hearted, including a lot of teachers and people in education, soft-hearted, more left-leaning people. So it's almost overcompensate to try and make sure that never happens again. We don't want little gay boys to ever feel like they want to kill themselves for who they are attracted to or anything like that. So let's go the other way. And instead of saying you're terrible for being that way, we're going to say you're great. We can't just go back to a middle place of just let people be who they are. It goes almost the other direction. It seems like there's some of that. The pendulum swings so bad from bigotry and judgment constantly, especially at a town like Liverpool, to the other side, which is like, let's just have a parade for you being, LGBTQ. And that's, I think, where we're at right now in society, is it was like really bad. Now it's like really good. And then we're seeing the negatives of this, but there's also negatives of saying it's amazing that you're this, because kids will naturally move in that direction just for the social reward element of this.
It's trendy, it's trendy to be part of the LGBTQ community. It's a life. And I think, you grow and you learn all of these things. And I've always said, it was a phase of my development. It allowed me to become the person that I am. A lot of these kids, which, social media plays a huge part of it, allowing children to sit and watch RuPaul's Drag Race, which, I am a big fan of RuPaul's Drag Race. I'm not going to lie, like that's my Saturday night in. I love it. But when we are teaching kids that this is cool, or, this is the way to be, it confuses people. And, I look at that from my own perspective, which was, at the age of 5, I was watching movies that were made for 18-year-olds and for 15-year-olds that I shouldn't have been watching. And that warped a lot of my kind of thinking and a lot of my mind when it came to, sex and when it came to connecting with other human beings. And it plays a huge part. Now, I think it's important that we show diversity. I think it's important that we allow diversity to be shown. As someone that one day going to be a parent myself, that child's going to have 2 fathers. That is just something that needs to be normalized. But there's a very fine line. And I think what a lot of people are doing, and especially a lot of these people that are super woke, and, they think that what they're doing is the right thing. And sometimes it's not necessarily about doing the right thing because you think that it's right. Like, a lot of these people that talk the talk have zero knowledge of what the gay community is about or how we live as LGBT people. Like, they have zero knowledge. And, that comes back to my other side of my dad's Black, so, that makes me mixed race. And, I think especially like, the Black Lives Matter movement, and I think, there's more, white lefties that are shouting about it than there are actually Black people. And it's like, please, it's like there's a lot of these do-gooders in the world, and I get it. They're doing it from a place of fear, and they're doing it from a place of, I just want everyone to be okay. But actually, they don't always realize that what they're doing sometimes is actually causing more harm. Because you look at how the community is right now, we've gone 20 steps back. Like, we have.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I think it's a mix of virtue signaling too, of people just like, how do I show that I'm a good person? Well, I'm against racism. I like marginalized communities like the LGBTQ. Like, put it out there that I'm a good person because I care about these people. I think it's that. And then I also think it's what you're saying, which is I see as the flip side of empathy. Empathy is a beautiful thing. So someone who, a baby is in need, we have that in ourselves so that we can feel the pain of that baby and go care for it. But what's the most vicious thing in the woods is a mother bear. So you fuck with her babies, her cubs, and it's a wrap. And there's that element too. So I think it's a mix of virtue signaling. Look, I'm a good person. And you go after these trans kids, these gay kids who grew up like the way you did, Calvin. You go after them. I am going to be mother bear your ass and make sure that you never, ever get near this person. But when you apply that to it could be gay people, it could be Black people, it could be any kind of marginalized group. What you're essentially saying is that you're a bear cub. Like, you need my protection. And that's where I get a little like iffy about it. And I feel like to be offensive is like, wait, you need me, white person, to protect you? Maybe you have your own, autonomy to do that. Maybe you don't need me to go out and protect you. Maybe you can protect yourself. And it gets tricky because there are elements of like, we need support from people who aren't in the community to support the community. But where do you draw those lines? It gets really tricky, but I think those are elements that are definitely in play.
Yeah. I know a woman who, her kid was gay, that went to school, and, she said to him, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough going through school, but I'm always going to be here for you. And it's like, you're setting them up. Like, you're setting them up already. And and, it's like, the thing is, through life, we're all going to go through challenges. Life is going to be a bitch. Get used to it. Life is not always going to go the way it's supposed to go. There's going to be mean people in the world, and that's the way it's going to be. Like, if the things that happened to me growing up, which, maybe shouldn't have happened, the things, I was sexually assaulted, I was abused growing up emotionally, physically, and by people, and I was an addict, and I was an alcoholic, and, those things are tough, but it made me to be the person that I am today, and I'm very, very grateful for all of those things that happened. And I think what the main important thing is, we allow, when it comes to, kids who may be gay or kids that may think that they're trans, is just to allow the process to happen. And I think if anything, it's us as adults that put that pressure on. And, for me, it's social media that plays a huge part of that. The people that make social media themselves will not even allow their own children on social media because they know how it works and what it does. So I've always said, which is, allow children to be children. That is it. Allow the innocence to be there. Do not label it as something.
Yeah.
And try not to question it as something. We find out these things when we find out. But there's this narrative that plays, which is, well, if they take hormones at the age of, 15, 16, then it's going to be easier for them. And it's...
Well, okay. So let's talk about that, because the idea of puberty blockers is essentially that it'll be, if you do puberty blockers earlier, the better, because then you won't go through puberty as the other gender, and therefore you will be more presentable. And I think being more presentable makes it easier to be trans in the world. I look at like my friend Buck Angel. I mean, looks like a dude. He's like bald, burly, big shoulders, furry shoulders, like furry chest. Like no one's going, wait, that might be a chick, might have a vagina. Like no one. So it does make it easier, but he transitioned like the early 90s and he's like 60 years old now. So he's been, it's like been like 30 something years. But I think that when we talk about giving, okay, so I talk about this openly because I think that we need to be talking about this. So hormones and puberty blockers on children. What I am told by people over and over and over again is that they are completely reversible. That is the narrative that is mainstream narrative. And I am not a doctor. I'm not a medical expert, but I do have questions. How can it be completely reversible? Like completely? There's no long-lasting elements of your physiology? Are we certain about that? How do we know that for sure? What are your thoughts on that? I'm not looking for confirmation bias here from you, Calvin. I'm trying to really understand this thing, but I have questions. This idea that you can give essentially like chemical castration, essentially these chemicals to like a 14-year-old or 13-year-old like Chloe Cole had, and then have no long-term repercussions to that. Like if when you turn 17, you go, you know what? Nope, never mind. I actually am a girl, but you've had testosterone pumped into you for 4 or 5 years in those pivotal years around puberty. Is that completely reversible?
Well, there has to be mental damage within that. I think that's the main thing to touch on is someone wants to reverse at the age of 18, then there is always going to be a mental impact on that. So firstly, there is something there that is probably not reversible, so that is there. But what my thing is, if you're believing that you're in the wrong body and you believe that you are maybe a male, and you do not want your breasts to grow, how do you know that you don't like them if you've not had them? Because I can sit here and say, I don't like mushrooms, and you say, have you had mushrooms? And I can say, no, I haven't. And how do you know you don't like them? Yeah. So it's just as simple as that. And I think we're giving too much authority to children, because a lot of these children nowadays are not thinking for themselves, whether that's in the trans community or not. There's the power of suggestion. There's a lot of that now. When I was 12, I thought I was this goth, and I used to wear these big long baggy pants, and that's who I am. I'm a goth, and that's it. And then when I was 15, I thought I was Tupac Shakur reincarnated. So it was like I went through all of these phases. I think these are developments we're learning about ourselves, and we're learning who we are. But these, a lot of these children nowadays are making dead set decisions of this is who I am, without even allowing the natural process of life to happen. Now, do I think it's irreversible? Like you said, I'm not a medical professional. I don't know about that.
What about for you, Calvin? Like you took estrogen. I mean, you were an adult by then. You already gone through puberty, but you took estrogen. So you took it for how long? A year?
Just under a year, and I was about to go get breast surgery.
Yeah.
I was about to have breast augmentation. I was about to have my face broke in 5 different ways, have my jaw chiseled, and about to have facial feminization done. And there was a whole process of my detransition, and I kind of noticed this sense of me chasing happiness. It was just the Botox at first, it was just the lips at first, it was just a little bit of filler, and then I knew that I was constantly chasing this place of happiness, and I had to, my whole journey was a very spiritual journey. It was about, finding happiness within. The reverse of it, I grew just under an A cup size of breast tissue. I was able to kind of like lift it.
Okay.
So
just from the estrogen.
I look like, just from the estrogen, and then also testosterone blockers.
Okay. But did you come back now, or do you feel like you look different, or is there like sensitivity in your breast? Like,
no. I think what I noticed is that there is a little tiny bit of tissue at the end of my nipple.
Okay.
So there's a little bit of extra, there's a bit of extra tissue there. Then I lost a lot of weight when I was taking estrogen, and obviously, trying to make my body as well as I could to look as feminine as possible. I lost a lot of weight, and gaining weight for me over the years and gaining muscle, again, has been very difficult.
That makes sense, yeah.
So gaining muscle was very difficult for me, and retaining muscle. And after 8 years of not eating meat, I began eating meat again just under 2 months ago, and
nice.
I had to kind of see if that helped, and it has helped with my producing more muscle. So that has happened for me. But also, what's really interesting is I've been sober now for many years, and that was all part of the detransition. When I got sober, it was to kind of address my alcoholism, and I'd done a 12-step program, and what I found out through that 12-step program was my mask that I wore throughout my whole life. Being trans was the biggest mask, and alcohol wasn't going to kill me. Then I was going to become a different person, and I was going to become a woman to eradicate everything about Calvin, because I just couldn't sit with Calvin. And I learned to do that over the years. Whenever I have, and it happens every now and then, and it hasn't happened for some time now, but when an alcoholic has a bad day, or life gets a bit tough for them, they usually think of a drink, and they usually think of having a drink. But for me, it wasn't that. I used to think of becoming Cal again. Life will be so much easier, and I'm just here because I get to live away from Calvin, and that for me is the cherry on top of the sense of addiction. And that for me was my addiction, and that for me was my escapism, which was finding any distraction away from Calvin.
That's powerful, man. One more question about the hormones.
Go ahead.
Because you say you did it for a year, which is not very long after puberty. I worry about the medical professionals, though, because I do think they're compromised. That's just going to help me with more confirmation bias. But you were in this body being pumped with some estrogen and testosterone blockers. If you would have done this at 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and gotten off at 20, do you think that it would have changed your body physically in a way that is going to last far beyond 20? Or do you think you just, go right back to like, now I'm back to being masculine? It seems so common sense to me that like, when you say it's reversible, like over how much dosage, over how much period of time, at what age? That's the questions I have. But I just get told, shut up, they're reversible. You know what I mean?
So, I have a friend who was transitioning around the same time as me. We met online, and he detransitioned again around the same time as me. Now, he's had surgery on his breast because he may have took to the estrogen more than me, but I know that he had surgery on his breast because he had that extra bit of tissue that was there. Okay. Now, if I would have continued for a longer period of time, I probably would have also had to get surgery to get that tissue taken out, because it would have grown. So I think when people say, oh, it's reversible, maybe it is, but through surgery, but at the same time, it's like, why are we putting ourselves through something like that? And my mindset back in the day was that you asked before about bottom surgery. Well, no, I was never going to get bottom surgery because it's not reversible. But I knew in my mind that if I got breast, I calculate this all in my head, which is, maybe I'll only want the breast for like 10 years, maybe I'll get them taken out. And, that was a lot of the personal stuff that was going on in my head, which was, if I just get the breast, then at least that is reversible. If you're even considering the fact that something is reversible, then that obviously means that you're not completely certain with what thing that you're doing. Yeah. If you're sitting there to argue the fact that, well, it's reversible, so it's okay, you're not certain in what you're doing, so don't be doing it.
I think that's where we can all kind of agree is like detransitioning isn't ideal. Like that's something that should be avoided. The last big question I have for you though, because I feel like you'd be perfect for this, is I've looked at like the work of Kenneth Zucker. I think he's at Canada, Dr. Deborah So. One of the things that they've pointed out, and I'm going to get the numbers wrong, but it's essentially with young people that have gender dysmorphia, something like 80% of them turn out to just be gay. They kind of outgrow it. They're just gay. So one of the things that they talk about is that this movement, this like push for transgenderism is almost like an extermination. It's a homophobic movement because you're eradicating, like there are masculine women and feminine men. Some are gay, some are not. Tomboys exist, like effeminate men who are straight, maybe in musical theater or whatever, like that kind of stuff. They absolutely exist. Human beings are very diverse. But that idea of this being a homophobic movement is an interesting one because that's something that Dr. Deborah So has talked about, something that Kenneth Zucker talked about. And I think it's something that's led to a lot of people like thinking about, because if you're in the LGBTQ community, like is this some level of like eradicating gay men or gay women from society? Like, like you're not a lesbian, you're actually a guy. And you're not really gay, you're actually a girl. That's something that I feel like I'm just meeting you now, but you seem like someone who's like a proud gay man, like you're a dude, you like masculine things as much as you are also a feminine guy, like you're still a dude, and you seem to be very wanted to support the gay community. And I think that when you link the gay community and the trans community as like always together, that's not necessarily true. Like they're together in some respects, but they're not together in others. What are your thoughts on that? It's kind of a long kind of setup, but what are your thoughts on that idea of the trans community and what it's doing for gay men and gay men because that's where you are, but like the gay community in general?
I think my own experience, and I've spoken about this very openly as well, which was conversion therapy. And this sense of, this can be a hidden sense of conversion therapy because, like myself, I'm not that special. And I believe that there are other people, and I work personally with other people that are trans that are also in the midst of detransitioning or questioning their transition. And when it comes down to this ingrained sense of internal homophobia and guilt and shame of being gay, you will find a way to escape that. Now, whether that be transitioning or living your life in the closet. Now, back in the day, a lot of men lived their lives in the closet and had kids and had wives and, kind of had sex on the side. But for me, I think when we actually look at the process of what it is, especially with this trans community, and there's such a huge push on, gender identity and, queerness and being trans, for me, it was a conversion therapy. It was a sense of conversion therapy for me because I was no longer identified as being gay. I was now straight. Oh, hallelujah. I'm cured. I'm now a straight woman. Like, that was my belief, I look in my diary, which was, my goal was to be somewhat of a white cisgendered woman, a straight cisgendered woman. That's what my goal was to be seen as that by society. Now, if I was so comfortable with being gay, or I was so okay with gayness, why was I pushing it away so hard and trying to get rid of it so hard? So, I somewhat agree with that because gay men are kind of becoming the minority in a way. I think we are being pushed out, but we're also the loudest at the moment. I think, a lot of gay men are kind of standing up to this movement and what it means to them.
All right. Well, yeah, I mean, it makes sense to me. The whole point of this podcast is to try just hear different perspectives and things along those lines. So like, I'm not trying to always have my guests agree with me. Far from it. I didn't seek you out and be like, all right, he's going to agree with everything I'm saying. It's like, what is your story? And then where is the overlap that I'm getting from all these other perspectives? Because if you're saying it and this person's saying it and that's person, and I'm hearing this all over the place, then there's something there that is true.
Yeah, of course. I think when it comes to trans people, I mention this a lot. I have trans friends and, I love them like everyone else. And, I believe that everyone is allowed to be whoever they want to be. But my main concern is that people are doing what they're doing from a healthy place,
100%.
And making the decisions from a healthy place. Now, there's a lot of people that I know who are trans who, when I detransitioned, they've said, I don't even want to look at the possibilities and try to understand maybe why I'm transitioning, but I'm okay with just going this way forward and doing what I'm doing. And, I respect that because they've actually, they've acknowledged that there could be a reason to why they're transitioning, but also they've chosen to go ahead and to go forward. Now, saying that, these are people that live their lives very normally, they're productive members of society. They go to work, they have, loving families, they have partners, and that's how they are. Now, when I was transitioning, my whole life was about the activism, the shouting, the screaming, the making sure that everyone knew and making sure that everyone abides with how I need you to all be. Like, no, that's not individuality. And that's why we've got so many people from the right and so many people are coming up against it so strong because they're being told how they should be accepting things or how they should be. And the thing is, not everyone's going to like my cooking. Fine.
Yeah, and children. I think when you bring children into it, there's that mother bear element of the conservatives then, especially. I think that's one that we're going gender affirming care. I think we got to talk about it more. And you can't, like, I've gotten like blocked and reported by like other teachers for just asking questions about that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't ask questions, just support these kids and affirm their gender. It's like, no. I am fine with adults doing whatever they want to do, but I'm not okay with lying to children and having them do things that may or may not, I don't know, be really dangerous for their health mentally and physically. Like we need to talk about this. To silence me and call me a transphobe for asking questions, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stand up and ask questions because I'm not telling anybody what to do. I'm not saying don't give puberty blockers to kids. I'm not. I'm saying let's talk about this precisely. So,
Yeah, and you know what? Only time will tell, and I've said this before, and I think, maybe in about 5 years' time, 10 years' time, we'll see the effects of what's happening today. Maybe we were wrong, maybe we were right.
Tavistock Clinic and stuff. That's in the UK, the Tavistock Clinic. I think they just shut it down or something like that. But Thank you so much for having this conversation with me, man. I really appreciate it. I think that your story is a powerful one, especially when you talk about the reasons, like your background and stuff. It just makes sense. And I love, one of my favorite quotes is Marilu Nonaki. She's like an old nun. I think she just passed away, but it's there isn't anyone in the world that you couldn't love once you've heard their story. I love that. I think it's really beautiful. So thank you for sharing your story on here, man. I think you're really an important voice to add nuance to this conversation. Where can people follow your work, get connected with you and things like that? Can you give us some plugs and places to find you?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram, which is Calvin Lunt, and I also have my own podcast, which is on Spotify, which is called Becoming a Woman to Become a Man. So yeah, you can hear my full story there.
Absolutely. Beautiful. All right, man. Well, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate you, and props for being so vocal about this stuff, because it's probably not easy. You probably get a lot of hate. I'm sure you get a lot of love and support too, which you deserve. So thank you. Thank you for taking your time with me.
Thank you.
If you enjoy these kinds of complex conversations and want to try to apply them in your own life, check out my free download, Debate to Dialogue, a guide on having productive conversations on religion and politics. It's available at www.cylinderradio.com/debate to dialogue.